Now we have two parallel tracks. In track 1, there is a panel discussion on building strong, smart cities infra for resilient India, moderated by N.S.N. Murthy, partner and leader, PwC India. The panel discussion in track 2 is on reimagining PSUs for making India Atmanirbhar. This will be moderated by T. Radhakrishna, editor, ET Government. Over to you, gentlemen.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. We are here on the Economic Times e-governance summit discussion around the smart cities, and I have a very esteemed panelists who have spent a lot of time on the ground doing a lot of work in the last several years on the smart cities. Just to share with everyone, I'm the moderator of the next 45 minutes. I'm a partner with PwC. I look after the smart cities as a business, working with several cities. So I will also be posing some questions which are, I think, relevant for city as well as from a state and the citizen standpoint. So that's what how we are going to run the panel. So, and we will, since it's a virtual, what we are going to try and do it as much as interactive. We will try and do that during the session. And we hope that everyone will enjoy the session and get valuable inputs out of it. Having said this thing, I think let me set the context. We have seen a couple of phases of pandemic. The pre-pandemic where the lockdown was there, and I think we knew nothing about the pandemic on how the COVID is, what type of spread and the impact it will be. Then there was a pandemic period. We knew it. There were a lot of guidelines. There was government policies, lockdowns, and unlocking. All those was done. And now we're in the third phase where the vaccination is going on. So the process is, again, we are in a very structured way. The vaccination is going on. I think the cities are at the foremost of this entire journey and the challenges which are faced. And therefore, I want to actually ask all of you, all my three co-panelists, about the various strategies taken by them in your particular cities and the state. In the case of Abhishek, for you, uh, for in the smart cities. Just before that, let me introduce the three panelists. We have Raj Cherubal. He's the CEO of Chennai Smart City. Raj has been the first CEO of the Chennai Smart City, and he's since inception he has been there. And I think one of the rare feats he has been able to achieve. Welcome to the event, Raj. And we have Ms. Pamela. She is the Commissioner, Warangal Municipal Corporation, as well as the CEO of the Smart City, Warangal Smart City. And she has been driving a lot of interesting projects in Warangal. Well, I heartily welcome you, Ms. Pamela. And we have Abhishek. He is representing the state of West Bengal. There are multiple projects which are undergoing in state of West Bengal. And one is under the smart cities, which is the Newton Calcutta. We know there is a climate and the green city project, which is Calcutta Municipal Corporation has taken for the last several years. And there's other programs also. And we will actually let Abhishek give us more information around the various strategies and the projects taken up by the state of West Bengal. And coincidentally, two of the states are in election mode also. So that's another interesting part of this entire agenda. So let me come straight to Chennai, Raj, for you. The four phases, as I spoke about, how did you see the role of a smart city in all the four phases, from the unknown perspective of when we knew nothing about the COVID, the last February to this March, or let's say last March to this March. March is when the lockdown happened. Last March to this March, how 1 year. How do you see the smart city working? What were the strategies in the last four different sections?
So I think, more than any smart city or not, what is appreciated is the existing structure. For sure in Chennai, the corporation, the local body's ability to deal with any kind of disaster. I mean, we have a long way to go, obviously, to become, it could even be better anytime. But point is that Chennai has faced floods, Chennai has faced cyclones and so on and so forth. So the machinery is in place. That was pretty impressive to watch the right from commissioner on down to the junior most engineers, conservancy workers, and of course the Tamil Nadu government health department and so on. So I think the physical structure is there. I think that's something, there is no substitute for all that. What I think, not just smart city, but collectively the IT companies, there are other departments and so on. The data made a big difference. So I think how data was collected, data was processed every day, whether it is to catch people who are violating quarantine to various other things. I think the electronic layer was put on top of the existing structure. That's something we shouldn't miss, because when we say smart, we always think in terms of electronics and computers and cloud. The human capital was there, and the systems were there. That I think made a huge difference. But the command and control center, the related data behind the scene, apps, cameras, surveillance, all those things obviously made a huge difference. What could have been a lot more brute force became a lot more of a smartphone. I think today's smartphone is so, I don't know what the right way, ubiquitous, I guess, that we just take it for granted. The way corporation and others were able to use it to track people, or in a positive way help people, at the same time track the violators and then catch them and give education, disseminate information, etc., was pretty impressive. And it just gives you a hint of what's coming in the future, both in how do we deal with future pandemics and so on. At the same time, how do we proactively start not only predicting disasters, but also in a positive way, proactively start helping citizens so that life becomes better.
Thanks. I think that's extremely important. I think Chennai has built up the SOPs also, which actually deals with this kind of various emergency situations. Ms. Pamela, coming to you, Warangal didn't get the opportunity to have the command and control center in place before the entire pandemic took place. How did you actually manage various, how did you reach out to the citizens during the lockdown, post-lockdown, unlocking phase, and now during the vaccination? How the city is coping up with these stress and
Good evening, Mr. Murthy. This is a very difficult question to deal with, given the fact that most of the established SOPs for this pandemic revolved around the Integrated Command and Control Center. Like during the pandemic, actually, we were looking at a DPR of an Integrated Command and Control Center. So, in fact, when pandemic came, we were not having the system, that IT system in place per se, but we had a very robust system like human capital, we can say, which came into action right away. So the entire city or the country suffered lockdown, but since we are as CEOs, I'm also doubling up as a corporation commissioner. So that in use and came in handy. So we had our frontline workers like the ASHA workers, the representatives from the communities called the resource persons, community organizers. We had our own sanitation workers, sanitary jawans, so who sprung into action immediately. So in terms of human intervention or efforts, we were not lagging behind. But of course, especially in terms of, let us say, contact tracing, tracking down the affected population and quarantining them and keeping a close surveillance on the zero movement zones or containment zones. It would have been way easier if we had ICCC in place. Nevertheless, this pandemic gave us a very useful insight into how we should be looking at designing the DPR of an integrated command and control center. Initially, whatever DPR we had planned was very surveillance and monitoring intensive. Right now, we also know.
Yes, so I was mentioning about the human capital and the human systems being in place. So the only thing we were lacking was the full-fledged integrated command and control system was not there for Warangal city as such. So, but it also gave us the opportunity to relook at the design of integrated command and control center. So now, instead of heavily focusing on surveillance or monitoring per se, so we'll also look at how it will impact in situations which catches unawares like this. For example, we can also relook this the system of ICCC for tracking down patients, or for contract tracing, for monitoring of your no movement zones, or of containment zones. So, and also we would also like to enhance the already available features for solid waste management in an ICCC. So that is where we would like to take a relook at ICCC after this pandemic.
So very, very interesting points. I think as far as my information goes, most of the cities have actually used the command and control center first two use cases for surveillance and traffic management. I think what actually the non-availability of ICCC helped you identify additional use cases which could take precedence over these ones. And I think that's a great learning at this moment. From there, Abhishek, I'm coming to you. How so? You have different types of cities. There's one mega city which is Calcutta, and then you have Calcutta in itself is broken up into three municipal corporations. How did you actually? How did the government manage that? How does the smart cities, Newtown, Calcutta, or even other cities have been able to use the digital infrastructure to manage the pandemic and post-pandemic right now the situation?
Unfortunately, West Bengal faced Amphan also post-COVID. So I'll start with that.
Yeah.
And the day after COVID, there was a total breakdown of the network. Our HCM wanted to have a VC with DMs, SPs, and even the Kolkata Municipal Commissioner. So it was very difficult, and we went to our Nabanno Secretariat, and there also there was no network. So biggest thing, we all are talking about smart city and everything, but the biggest demon of the entire thing is the network. We are talking about 4G, 5G, and Amphan may be a special case. So in the scenario when there is no network, what will we do? The biggest problem. Even we are unable to have a phone call for the last, actually from the Amphan day till even in main cities like Kolkata, for 10 days the networks were not available. For voice calls also, sometime we are getting connected, sometimes we're not getting connected, and then what to do? So actually, IIT Kharagpur has came with a solution where through drone we can establish network. So we are trying to explore that. Basically, here wherever the connectivity will be lost, suppose because of any natural calamity or because any issue, one part has no connectivity, the tower has been disabled, BTSs are not working. So we can just send a drone there, and then we can establish the connectivity, and we can talk and interact, and we can know, because such pandemics may come again, and it may create a silo and an island or a small city where we are unable to connect to the road and all. So such innovative solutions needs to be taken care of. Everyone is talking, I know everyone is trying to do whatever they can do at the best, keeping the optimal scenario that connectivity will be good, everything will be there. So my main concern is these two things: the connectivity part. In spite of all 4G networks, Geo, and everything, still we don't get even a small data transfers in kilobytes are sometimes hampered. So we are running RLVD solutions not only in Newtown but in other 5-6 commissionerates and other police districts also. But the accuracy of the softwares, Videonetics is one of the pioneer in this RLVD AI solution. They have some 15 or 100 plus patents, and they're pioneer in US. But US and Kolkata, I mean West India, is not the same. So their softwares are not being able to predict actual cases. So then we have to deploy some manpower, and they then scrutinize, and based on that cases are being claimed. Many people are coming down and asking us to show us the pictures. So now we have started showing us the pictures for those red light violations and all. So taking this traffic fine ahead, actually 2 years back we started with this and on the spot traffic challan device, POS device, for the entire traffic management. So the best part of this is not only the violator can pay on the spot for any fine, but we are capturing the data, and the data is captured with the lat long and photograph of the driver and the vehicle, and with all those offenses, and then all those subsequent offenses are also captured. The main part is not to collect money from the people. The main part is to make them more disciplined. That is the main cause. So whenever the subsequent offenses will come and all these things, these data we are trying to analyze, and we have made a very good visual dashboard wherein the ADG traffic can just draw a line and put down a timeline that's okay from on this national highway from point X to point Y on a Google map. You can just draw a line, and then you can also filter out the timings. So from night 11 to 5, what all cases are there? So drunken driving cases are getting done on which places, at what time? So based on that, those things, some strategic decisions can be taken. Moving forward, because now we have all the data, on the spot find data is with us, then RLVD data is with us. So all the violations are there, plus we are also capturing the accident data. That too for the entire state, the plan. So the plan is that actually we are capturing all the data. Now we want to go ahead by capturing all those data. We want to do some artificial intelligence. And now the way Google Maps says, if I want to give if we give 2 locations where we want to go, it shows 4 different ways, saying that this road is 5 minutes faster, this is 2 minutes slower, this is the best optimized route. So there we want to put a safety index based on those data, some machine learning and algorithm wise, that okay, if you go by this way, this is safer by 10%, this is not safer or dangerous by 20%. And whenever there all those accident prone zones will be there, the dark spots, so there some alerts will be made on the Google map. Okay, this please drive properly, cautiously, dark spots are coming, this is accident prone zone, last statistics are this. Such applications are already there in Western countries, wherein people basically they try to prevent accident. Most of the times during the predictive analytics, the police and ambulance reach at the place of accidents prior to the accident which is going to happen, and sometimes accidents are avoided, and even if the accident happens, all those things are available to minimize the casualties. So traffic wise, we are trying to go in this way. As far as the medical and health domain is concerned, because as you asked about the COVID thing, so we were trying to create an e-prescription. So basically the idea was that doctors will not prescribe the medicine name, they'll prescribe the chemical name. So we tried to basically start this e-prescription. Then with the e-prescription part, doctors initially told no, they can't type. Then we came down with a drop-down mode. So then they said, no, drop-down is also because of connectivity in the hospitals, drop-downs will also not work. And it was actually not working. Drop-downs were not coming properly based on the other parameters because of connectivity in hospitals are very low. So then now we started with a AI-based, basically voice-based prescription, voice-based e-prescription. So initially all those hiccups were there. But post-COVID, actually during the COVID, all those patients who have some comorbidities, they required medical attention, maybe for diabetes or hypertension, for any other diseases. So they were scared of going and getting the treatment done, and even doctors were not willing to basically impart their consultations. So then we started one free online video consultation platform. It's not a video, just not a video consultation platform. It's an end-to-end seamless platform, wherein as of now around lakhs of people have registered and taken consultation on the spot with top doctors of the city, and all the top doctors came there and they agreed to give free services. And this is basically entire EHR is there. The patient need to register, take an appointment, and all the doctors were giving schedules. Post appointment, they are supposed to upload their medical history, medical reports in EHR, and we were converting it to EHR format. And then they used to give all the vital statistics. Everyone had the temperature and those oximeters. Based on that, the doctors were consulting them as per the availability, and in how on the spot real time prescription was generated and shared to the patient. So that's what we did during COVID. So now it will help me to take this e-prescription across the state, because actually doctors are now acquainted with. So it helped us to make those people digital.
Perfect. I think there's several things out here, and So moving from, so Abhishek very nicely talked about the data part of it. Raj, I know it's your favorite subject, data. So how's the progress on the data and the urban observatory? I think you were working on various data models, policies, and monetization, taking up that program. So how's that program with Chennai and I think with the ministry in conjunction going? I think you have been leading those programs. So something you would like to actually share with us, the use cases you already worked
Quite a
on?
bit of, like earlier speakers were mentioning. See, data now, at least our team, what we're doing is trying to move towards data and financing, because the initial set of projects for the 1,000 crores, pretty much except for one, all have been tendered, all are in work order and execution stage. Now, I don't know if you know that the World Bank has chosen Chennai to be a city partner. Basically, there'll be a huge amount of investments from World Bank and from the Tamil Nadu government, based on a lot of the successes, not just Smart City, but other projects also, Metro Water and others have done good work. So the idea is that they will take up transport and water in a very big way, so that it won't be bits and pieces. But given the state of our cities, we've been doing any city for that matter. We do even a good project like a pedestrian plaza, etc., are small projects, very impressive project, but are still small. In order for us to scale to the rest of the cities, like for example, we are trying to work on something called a mega street project, which is 110 kilometers inside the city, where you're taking up the ideas like plaza, urban forest, and taking it to the 6 different parts of the city and so on. The point is that to scale, it is very obvious that in our city, we don't have project management tool, we don't have data, we don't have ability to monitor the projects when it's happening, to monitor when it's operational. So all these aspects, unless we have systems in place and processes in place, we won't be able to scale for sure, right? Then, for example, like I've spoken in other seminars also, we've eco-restored about 210 water bodies. Now the question is, how do you now monitor it? How do you make sure that it doesn't get misused or encroached? So we are looking at drones and satellite-based systems to see, can we use analytics to keep track of the water body? Same thing with we are going to be overwhelmed with parking data. We're going to get overwhelmed with the intelligent traffic system. We're just starting the tendering process, citywide, intelligent traffic management system, which will be sending in a ton of data at us. So if you look at all this data, then the question becomes, is there a way for us to look at the big data and so on to give more insights into how to govern better, what decisions to take, whether if you have 100 rupees for roads, which road are you supposed to work on, and so on and so forth, right? Like I've always said in other seminars, we don't have 50, 60, 100 years to sit back, relax, and plan and take it methodically. We have to do it methodically, but in a very different way, by using data to see how do we utilize our limited resource to get maximum amount of benefits for the citizen. So a lot of activity happening in data. And then, for example, we already have set up something called the Digital Experience Center, where we are trying to work with Dassault Systems to see, can we have a 3D mapping of the city, which will help us start planning the city better. Simple example would be, today, if you want to put a camera, it's all guesswork. Police may say a particular location, corporation people may say another location, but there is no scientific way of saying what is the coverage, is it actually serving the exact purpose, which angle should the camera be. So using the 3D model of the city, you can actually start, instead of going there and standing around and looking, you can sit in your office and plan it properly. That's just a tip of the iceberg. You can do flood planning, disaster management, all kinds of interesting projects on layer on top of various other projects can be implemented, use these things. And lastly, of course, we are going to be looking in a big way, and I think the ministry also is pushing very hard to say, can we look at alternate methods of funding? So whether it's bonds, Indore has done a great job on carbon credits, so we're looking into that. The potential for alternate funding is also there. Unless we look into these different models, we will not be able to scale, we will not be able to fund it.
So Raj, just to extend on that, but how are you making that as a much more human centric? Because when I actually was talking to one of my friends, and he said, when you are actually in this workshop, ask definitely about human centric approach to the technology enablement. So that's a question which is from the outside, and I am now picking up and asking you the question because you're actually doing so much of tech work.
Sure.
How are you bringing the human centric? Because you're doing so much of a simulation. from where are you actually inputting the human centric approach and the inputs from there? So how are you actually managing that piece?
So a very good question. So for example, I think it's a lot of us who go to seminars, intellectuals, consultants, we all love to talk about public participation and stakeholder participation. But I always found it to be very skeptical, because we always have a handful of stakeholders and handful of people we consult. So it's not like 8 million people of Chennai got to see what's going to happen and be part of the planning. So in the digital experience center, just one example I'll give you, where idea was that the public should be able to come there and see the future of, let's say, Tondiarpet or an Adyar, what it is today and what it is tomorrow. If when the architect, for example, plans something in Adyar, the public should be able to sit at home or come to our digital center, put on a 3D glass, etc. I'm not trying to glamorize technology, but my point is, how do we take what we're doing and absorb feedback from the public, and then ensure that that feedback actually gets either implemented, or we tell public that, look, it can't be done, or that it's not the right approach. Whatever, public wants an answer to suggestions. When I make a suggestion, I want you to tell me, is it possible or not? Point is, these technologies are helping us probably scale what we are not able to do today. Today, for example, you call a bunch of people, you sit in a auditorium, have chai, discuss a topic, which is fine, but that's just handful of people, right? Even these kinds of Zoom, etc., can only reach handful of people. So the technology, whether it's social media, whether it is website, whether it is some other mechanism, 3D, etc., or for example, like you could always think of if you have all this data somewhere, you could always disseminate it using kiosks, using video terminals in ward offices and zones offices. We have a bunch of VMS facilities across the city. And I think about 100 VMS Smart City itself has. There are other VMS of police and so on. So there are always, once you have the data, which is the difficult part, you can always give that to the public. So for example, one case study, one scenario I'll give you. The way I keep pushing the consultant is to say, look, if you and I are public, want to know what is going to happen in Tondiarpet in this so-called mega street project, somebody should be able to touch the virtual lamppost and say how much electricity came from that solar panel that was installed, how much carbon was saved, how much resilience was created, etc., etc. Things which we talk in theory or in thick documents which hardly anybody reads. How do we disseminate these very important ideas, whether it's climate change, whether it is flood monitoring, disaster preparation, etc.? How do we get there? Lastly, my point is, when we did this command and control center, and something I recommend to everybody, don't worry about hardware. Don't be hardware centric. Anybody can put hardware. Anybody can put wires and data lines and IoT devices. In the end, what does the commissioner or an average engineer or average citizen want? They want to know, if a tree fell somewhere, what am I supposed to do, right? Whether you're a commissioner or a public, you want to know, okay, what is an SOP? Which truck will come? Who will clear the tree? Who will try to restore the tree, etc., etc., right? If there is waterlogging from last rain experience, from our experience, we know there's waterlogging here. Now I can tell you once, I can tell you twice, third time I'm going to get bored. I know you're not going to do anything about it. But then, is there a way to capture that information and then show the public that, look, you told us there's waterlogging here. Now we have put a water well there so that you absorb all this rainwater. Not only do you save the people from trouble and the road from damage, you have also recharged the groundwater. So I think all this put together, there is tera and petabytes of data which is not human absorbable, human brains cannot absorb. So I think these systems are important to digest it and give digestible, understandable way of pie charts and graphs and color pictures so that public is able to meaningfully participate in this project. So I think all this technology, we shouldn't get overwhelmed, or we shouldn't glamorize it to the point of sake of technology. And the question is very good, that it has to be human-centric, it has to be public-centric, and we need to keep the poorest guy in mind. We have to take women and women, children, elderly, everybody in mind, so that we don't get carried away by technology. Technology is there as a tool to serve the public.
Fantastic. So, Ms. Pamela, coming to you, I know while we have been talking about the command center data and everything, let me ask something different. I think from a Warangal standpoint, which are the 3 or 4 projects or initiatives that you are focusing on, which are actually more on social impact side of it, where actually the person on the ground, and I'm just extending where Raj is ending, saying that something which the citizen wants to know or get it done, or the engineer wants to get it done, which is the brass tacks of it. So how are we actually taking care, whether it is an education or a water or a sewerage or a septic tank management or a sanitation? How are you actually looking at Warangal's social impact projects? Is this something, and may or may not be a digital inclusive in that? I'm not too much into that, but is it creating a value and the betterment of life for the citizens?
Yeah, so in case of Warangal, in particular, we are focusing on more on solid waste management, solid waste and liquid waste management, because another area of integrated command and control center, like which I am anticipating is, for example, from the kind of waste which is generated from a residential colony, we should be able to gauge the health of the residents there as well. For example, in case of COVID, we read many articles about, traces of virus found in the sewerage linking a residential colony. So those kind of systems also we can put in place through an ICCC. So starting with that, the groundwork for the sanitation has to be done on field as well. So as a part of Smart City, we have laid a lot of emphasis on establishing sewage treatment plants. In fact, during COVID, we established a 750 KLD STP right in the heart of the COVID hospital, the government hospital. It was very useful because the drainage water from the hospital used to come and directly link itself with the main drainage network. So treating it was really helpful, and we could divert it and contain that water. Other than that, 3 other STPs, another 5 MLD, another 15 MLD, and 100 MLD STP are coming up in Warangal shortly. We are also looking at fecal sludge treatment plants. We have a 40 KLD FSTP in place already. Right now, we are building up a 150 KLD STP. We also have a 30-year-old legacy dump site where all the municipal waste of 407 square kilometers goes and gets dumped. So that's a 32-acre landfill, basically. So right now we are looking at a biomining project for the legacy waste. And then we are also looking at 2 transfer stations, and we have procured 12 sweeping machines also under the Smart City project. So this is the crux of the solid and liquid waste management that we are trying to do under Smart City. One lesson which we carried forward from COVID was that in crisis like this, the least human interface, if sanitation has, that would be the most beneficial to the urban local body. We were lucky that way, that we took a lot of precautions on ground, and we were careful enough that not even single COVID positive case arose among our sanitation workers. But that would not be the case every time. So this time, we particularly focused on sanitation's project on, grounding them and getting the most of it. And also social impact kind of things, if we envisage, we are trying to do a laundromat for the vulnerable washerman community here in Warangal. So we are trying to do 2 laundromats for them. For children and citizens in particular, youth in particular, we have 200-year libraries. One is the regional library and another is the central library. So they were in a ramshackle state. So now we are revamping them. We have given them furniture. We are doing all the renovations and civil works. And we are also trying to look at the digitization of the content available, especially the regional language content there. So those are the 2 projects. I think they have a very good impact. And also recently we did a pilot project for developing cycling tracks in Warangal. So that also caught citizens' attention, in a very positive way. So we have, as of now, piloted 4 kilometers of cycling track. In fact, it has a very good response from, not just from the hobby cyclists, but also from children, from people with, disabilities who use a wheelchair. So because it's a dedicated cycling lane, and since they use a wheelchair to come to office sometimes, that is a wheelchair cycle. So that is also useful to them. And also to women who now look at cycling also as a mode of transport, not just as a health or as a hobby. So these are very simple projects which we did under Smart City. But I think the social impact which they have created is manifold.
Just extending on that, and I think and everyone knows it's an open secret that the Hyderabad is the capital of the innovation and incubation. So it has a T hub which actually is driving most of the a lot of innovation, and T hub and Triple IT Hyderabad has also recently signed up with Ministry to set up the Living Labs initiative. So that's also is in progress. So is there something which and there are many startups in the region who's working very hard on various problem and civic issue solution. Are you planning to take few of these startups on board? And if yes, if you want to take it, is there a process and mechanism you have thought about it? Something like this, or how's that you wanted to put into place? Because startups is becoming a very, and let me not only say startups, the MSMEs also. So actually have the entrepreneurs, have smaller entrepreneurs are also brought in a lot of innovative technologies. Just to take an example on the sewerage treatment, there is a nanotechnology based sewerage treatment which is being done, so which actually doesn't involve a capex investment. So the startup is doing that. So stuff like that. So A is, are you actually already driving few of the startups within the city, working with the T-Hub or individually? Or B, if it is not, then is there areas that you would like to invite startups to do work in your city?
As on date, projects which were already allotted to established companies are being grounded. But yes, we are also exploring the role of startups in executing innovative projects here. For example, Warangal is also a city which is selected as a heritage city under Hriday scheme of Government of India. So of course, we have completed the execution of all 6 projects selected under the category, but still we have unexplored heritage, which I think if startups are roped into the scenario, they will be able to tell us better on how to develop amenities around these heritage sites and connect them on the mainstream tourism map. So that is one role we are looking at. And the second is about under smart cities, there is a challenge called Nurturing Neighborhoods Challenge. I think all of you are aware. Fortunately, we were one of the top 25 cities selected under this challenge. Also, we were one of the top 25 cities selected for the Cycles for Change challenge. Among the top 100 city, the 100 cities of smart city mission. So this is, we have developed a 4-kilometer track, but right now 54 kilometers of potential cycling roads are coming up. So that is the one area where I think we can rope in the startups. So we are fortunate to have T-Hub, and also we have a V-Hub, which is run by women entrepreneurs. So I think we'll rope them in, and I envisage the role in terms of developing neighborhoods which are friendly to all genders. All genders and all age groups as well. So that is where I think startups can do a fantastic job.
So one of the other commonality between all three of you, I think you would be interested to know, is all three of you are in states which have actually adopted blockchain as the core technologies, whether it is Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, or in Telangana. So all of you have actually, for various use cases, have done it at the state level. Now, I'm not going to talk about the blockchain, but I just wanted to actually say that if the state governments are actually being very proactive, so on the emerging tech part of it, maybe if you can spend some 2 to 3 minutes each on telling, is there an emerging tech driven solution that you are looking for in the city and the states? Let's have a very quick on that, and then I want to have the last question, which is about what can we do extra on beyond that. So we will start with Abhishek, so 2-3 minutes, and then we will move on to Raj and then Ms. Pamela.
Yeah, the blockchain part, actually, we are trying to create a certificate-less governance mechanism. Actually, I believe in the concept of not only certificate-less, but predictive governance. As you talked about, basically the citizens' engagement. Citizens' engagement will come only if we go by predictive governance. So what we have started, we have started the birth certificate as of now on blockchain. The idea here is that The moment a child is born, his social status is available with us from the parents. That data will be there. It's converted to blockchain. From the hospital, the data is entered. And when birth certificate is issued, it's converted to blockchain. Now, instead of issuing birth certificate, we'll ask the schools also to engage on that. The schools will not require the hard copy certificate. They can just access our system, verify it. And once they're admitted, the data will also be captured. The idea is that through the entire life cycle, the moment is doing his class 5 or class 10, and then so engineering and medical, whatever, and the entire data will be captured there. So if my entire data is captured and that on blockchain, and if I'm applying for a job, suppose for engineering job, real time I'll be able to say, okay, Abhishek Roy is an engineer, first class or not? Yes, first class, and based on a decisions will be taken. Going forward, I want to make it predictive governance type of things. As of now, what happens if I apply for a certificate? That certificate is sent back to the same department for verification, and it takes around 6 months to get it verified, and then only a decision on my candidature is taken. Now we have a very flagship scheme of Kanyasri where this girl childs are given some support from the government, and the main idea is to drop down, basically reduce the school dropouts, and also to reduce this pregnancy related complications, basically to delay their marriage. That is the idea. Now what happened? Most of the underprivileged people.
30 seconds.
Yeah. So the point here is that I want, if I have the data with me, so I will reach out to those people, to the citizens. Well, I'll text them an SMS. Okay, you are eligible for Kanyasri today in today's calendar year. If you want to apply, just send back an SMS. The moment they'll send back an SMS, their application is received, and now they can get the details with the. They can get back that subsidy instead of coming back and applying.
Perfect, perfect. So Raj, I know you are a very big fan of emerging techs. Which one is the latest now?
So I think, like I said, big data and machine learning and all that, without those kinds of technologies, we won't be able to kind of get insights and also use resources better. So I'll give you a way we are trying to approach. One, our core software in ICCC is Trinity, a Bangalore-based company, and then we're trying to see how do we deploy machine learning modules, so that whether it is somebody sitting inside the smart city, CSCL, or it could be an IIT. So we are talking to IIT people. So for example, I'll give you a simple example. We already have cameras on basic various roads watching traffic. IIT is developing some very cool algorithms to do analysis on it. So now instead of they deploying another camera, we could actually open up our data, including camera feed, and their students and scholars could easily run their algorithms to see which algorithm is working better, and then of course use that for our own intelligent traffic management system. Same thing with the machine learning modules, which means that whether it is a health data, road data, etc., which the human brain is not able to process, somebody sitting inside or outside should be able to use these machine learning modules, and then come up with insights for the commissioner, insights for secretary, insights for public and engineers and so on. And like Abhishek was pointing out, one of my favorite for many years I've been saying is we need to somehow get to the predictive way of doing things, rather than waiting for bad things to happen or even good things to happen. We should be able to predict and take preventive measures so that we can, save people the trouble, at the same time resources.
So Ms. Pamela, instead of asking this question, I think let me ask. I just wanted to change the narrative. I'm not going to ask the question that you are doing it. So let me ask a question and give a use case and scenario. So we all know that one of the most important element of cities or any other program is connectivity. So how do you connect and deliver the services? So one of the important elements of connectivity is how do you, whether fiberization, and the second part of it is whether it is a Wi-Fi or a FTTH. So that's a part. I know T-Hub is T-Fiber is a project which is going in Telangana. There's a West Bengal fiber project. There's a Tamil Nadu fiber project which has started. But beside that, for example, if there is a public Wi-Fi system you are applying, have you actually started thinking about on scenarios where you can actually add a public Wi-Fi to a physical infrastructure like a street pole or electric vehicle charging points or a bus stops or something else, because so that these public Wi-Fi projects that you can actually now take up it can be a PPP premium projects also, rather than just being a cost centers and then operated. So there are 2, 3 models where Vadodara has done something, Bhopal has done something, Delhi government has done something. Everyone has done differently the public Wi-Fi, but all of them have been running it 24/7. So is there a way that you actually started thinking about how to run a connectivity program to the end citizens, which is a Wi-Fi project, which is much more sustainable? So I'm just throwing a future. If not, then probably the question would be, would you be thinking about that? Is that one of the things that you would be interested in, and then build a program around that, probably for the citizens?
Yeah, that is a really good, good thing to think about, I think, right now. See, unlike established cities selected under the smart city mission, we are still a tier 2 city, and like we are not the capitals of the state. So our projects, which existing projects which were enlisted as smart city projects, focused more on the field part. Only three projects pertain to the ICCC, and very core technology driven, or IT driven. So other than that, all projects were very field centric and human centric, you can say. uh, Talking about the public Wi-Fi system, sure, we would like to look at those things, because we were already anticipating weather monitoring systems. How to incorporate them, and to very public, catching the attention of common public through interactive advertisement boards. So those are the kind of projects we were looking at. Smart poles. So I think public Wi-Fi, putting it, having it in place will definitely be helpful in getting these kind of projects piloted and taken up on a larger scale.
Additional question on that, Ms. Pamela. Just last one to you. Anything, any business use case or a problem statement that you want to leave it, and let the startups come back to you with an answer to that?
Here in Warangal, we have a lot of water bodies, around 230, 40 odd water bodies. So I would like to have startups which work specifically in the sector of lake rejuvenation, lake protection. And in fact, right after the COVID scenario, we were struck with urban flash floods, and we were affected for nearly 15 days. Very badly affected, because water levels, we had the highest rainfall in last 30 years. So we got 27 centimeters rainfall in one single day, and you know how urban cities grow, fully concretized. The water could not find a path to go away. So that was the scenario. I would like to have startups which work in case of, increasing or retaining the carrying capacity of lakes, protect them, and work towards their rejuvenation. So that is one aspect I would definitely want to have very passionate and startups working here.
Absolutely. And I know there are several startups in that space. They're doing a lot of good work around that. So I think whoever is listening to this, they will definitely reach out to you for that. Raj, something from your side, where do you want to focus? One business challenge you want to throw it open for everyone?
I think it's very difficult to say one. I think, see, water recycling is a simple one. A lot of technologies over the last many years have talked about it. The question becomes, what sounds great on pilot need not be scalable, and so on. So water recycling, a lot of sewage is going down the drain, literally. So that would be one. Water body respiration, as Pamela mentioned, is very, very critical. We've been looking for a holy grail kind of a thing, but we're not able to yet find a way. We've restored the water body. So we have already done 210 odd water body restoration, which is a big deal. But the problem is now, how do we monitor it? How do we get public involved? A little more comprehensive solution. A simple example would be, one of my pet peeves, since nowadays after COVID, I've been driving my bike around, is potholes, right? Fixing potholes seem like a very big, I don't know why, but it seems like a very big problem. There are good startups which are able to, it's all a matured company also, which gives you good data on road quality. How do we integrate that into our day-to-day contracting and ensure that we are monitoring? And like I said, most of it is 80-20 rule, right? Most of the potholes are probably concentrating on very few places that make life difficult. So many of those kinds of issues are critical for us. And of course, with COVID in mind, the question becomes, is there a way for us to not only predict what's going to happen next from smaller diseases to big time pandemics? And is there a way for us to quickly, remote, I mean, Abhishek had talked about remote doctor patient kind of connecting them so that low cost way of getting good medical health. All these are, I think, cutting edge technologies. A lot of startups have talked about it, but I think it's time we deploy it in a massive scale so that especially the poor people in our country have a better life.
Perfect, great. Abhishek, your choice of a business challenge to everyone.
As far as business challenge is concerned, the biggest issue is interoperability. Whenever we implement something, the other vendor chips in and they say that this thing cannot be used. I need to deploy the entire thing again. That is the biggest issue. I'll take an example of NCMC card, this National Common Mobility Card. The entire concept is that one same card can be used across the country. Now we are trying and talking to the banks. Everyone is willing to do, but everyone wants it in a closed loop. No one is willing to go into open loop. So what is the use of that NCMC card? Then we already had a lot of closed loop cards. The idea is that if I go to Kochi, I'll use the same card. If I come to Kolkata, I'll use the same card. I was very willing to do it for our ferry ghats and all. So this is the biggest issue. See, the other vendor has done something. You try and chip in and integrate it and use it interoperability. No point blaming them and doing it. Otherwise, everything runs in silos. If you talk about this connectivity and other things, so everyone is creating their own silo of connectivity. We have a contactless this parking system, wherein we are using the FASTag cards of the toll cards, the FASTag cards, and the same system we are using for collecting the parking fees. When the vehicle is coming, an RFID reader is placed and time is deducted, and we are collecting it. So for that, I have a Wi-Fi system. We are again trying to give this bus information. We have a separate Wi-Fi system. So no one is willing to integrate and interoperate. Everyone poses a challenge. So we need to collate and give a holistic solution.
Thanks, Abhishek. I think that's a very relevant point, and but there are cities who have actually been able to deploy a open loop based system which actually runs across not just the BRT system but also the store keeps, the retail also accept the same thing. So that's happening. I think there's but on your side, let me also tell you that from a smart city standpoint, there are two aspects of it. There is I think Raj is already deploying that the middleware component which actually enables the interoperability between multiple systems. So I think Chennai and Pune, they're already collaborating with the ministry to do that piece. The other part is there are standards which are smart city standards which are also being released and updated, and I think that they're also in place. It's only the intent of the MSI and the enforcement by the government. These are the two things which are left. Otherwise, everything in the system it is available. So these are the two things which I think if you are able to do it. But I think this has been a very interesting. I'll try to wrap up, and in the wrap up, I just wanted to share that I think there are a lot of commonalities between what we have discussed. I think the challenges are almost similar. Digitally, I think all the three states have been in the forefront of emerging tech, digitalization, fiberization, tech part of it, handling the disaster management situations, all those things. I think there's a lot of commonality. But I'm really interested to see how three of you can also at the offline can discuss with each other, because I think Chennai has done a lot of work with respect to the lake regeneration. I think Warangal can learn, and what West Bengal has done with respect to the health part of it, Chennai can actually take that piece. I think within this panel, we can actually have a collaboration built in, and probably Gaurav and from the Economic Times can help this bind together. The most important is what I want to leave it is for everyone who's part of listening to this is, I think there are two big challenges which have been put place by Warangal and Chennai. One is on the what you call the water body management and cleaning and monitoring part of it, which is Warangal. And the two most important is the water recycling, the much better and more efficient part of it, less capex intensive. And the second part of it is how do you actually run the pothole management part of it. And while I the operation maintenance of the concessionaire should be the SLA driven and all this, but how do the startup, and I know there are a lot of startups which came forward and did a pothole management analysis, but how do we integrate that in the bigger concessionaire contract in itself when the road laying is going on? So I think those are the points. And I thank you all the panelists on this. Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, Ms. Pamela. Thank you, Raj. And I think it's been very, very important discussions we had. And I thanks Economic Times for giving this platform and opportunity for all of us to have this conversation. Thank you, and good evening to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for a knowledge enriching session. Stay tuned and keep tweeting using the hashtag ETNGVS.